So there comes a day
Mm-hmm.
at some point that spring
Mm-hmm.
of 1993,
Correct.
where you say Senator Biden and you had an experience in a hallway in one of the Capitol buildings. Can you describe what happened that day?
Yes, This was during that time where I was kind of frozen out, so I was kind of surprised. But Marianne came rushing in with this bag, like a duffel bag or gym bag, she called it, and said, hurry, the senator's already on his way. Just follow him and try to catch him before the Capitol and give him this. He wants his bag. But I remember going down the Russell Building floors, and so I don't know if I was in the first floor or the basement, but there's corridors that lead to the Capitol and that kind of thing. And I was trying to catch up with him, and
This would have been on a weekday?
yes, and I remember like my heels, like my legs hurting a little, and like there was just from walking really fast. I remember things like that. And then I saw him at a distance. He was talking to someone, and they walked away the other direction. And then he greeted me. He remembered my name, and then I said, here you go, Senator. I handed him the bag, and it happened very quickly. I remember being pushed up against the wall, and thinking the first thought I had was, "Where's the bag?" Which is an absurd thought, but that's what I thought was, "Where's the bag?" Yeah, because I was handing it to him, and he had his hands under underneath my clothes, and it happened all at once. So he had one hand underneath my shirt, and the other hand, I had a skirt on, and he like went down my skirt and then went up. And I remember I was up almost on my tippy toes. And when he went inside the skirt, he was talking to me at the same time, and he was leaning into me. And I pulled this way away from his head, I remember. And so he was kissing my neck area, and he whispered, "Did I want to go somewhere else?" in a low voice. He said some other things. I can't remember everything he said. But he said something vulgar. And
May I ask what?
he he said, "I want to fuck you." And he said it low, and I was pushing away. And I remember my knee hurting because our knees, he had opened my legs with his knee, and our knees caps clashed. So I felt like this sharp pain. His fingers were inside of my private area, my vagina, and it wasn't. There was no small talk. There was no like precept. It was just sudden, and it was happening like that. And he was saying that to me, saying those things to me, and I was pulling away. And then he pulled back immediately when he could see I wasn't complying. I was obviously just tensed up and frozen and not kissing him back and not going with him. And he pulled back and he looked at me and he said, "Come on, man, I heard you liked me." And when he said that, it was either I heard or I thought, but I remember hearing heard. When he said that, I immediately started thinking what I did, like how I brought this on. Like, did I say something to somebody? Did I give an impression? I was just, my mind was racing. And in that moment, I knew this was really bad. I knew it was more than just like the assault. It was really bad. He was then angry, right? And I could feel, it wasn't like yelling angry, but like that hostility build. And he pulled back and he was just looking at me directly. And he pointed his finger at me and he said, "You're nothing to me. You're nothing." And I think, I think that's the hardest thing. And I know people talk about the assault, but his words, those words stayed with me my whole life. And as I've been trying to tell my story, I've kind of been torn apart trying to tell it. Those words come back. And it's like, it was cruel. So when he saw me obviously start to get upset by what he said, he took me by the shoulders and he just kind of shook me, almost like, and said, "You're okay, you're all right."
Had you said anything to him?
I wanted to say stop. And I thought it. I don't know if I said it, but sometimes you know, when I've had a couple bad dreams or a few bad dreams about it, I wake up yelling that. I wake up yelling, stop. And then um, he didn't look at me again. He picked up the gym bag, he turned around and he walked away and he never looked back.
It sounds like it happened in an instant.
I would say under 3 minutes. It was quick.
Within moments of seeing you.
Right. Like there was no, like he's never like engaged me. He never engaged me in conversation or asked me things. He just had me up and was kissing me and then saying that.
When you say that he went down the skirt and then back up, what is that like? Did he enter the skirt from the top of the skirt?
No. On the outside.
He came into the skirt from the
Right.
bottom of the skirt.
Right.
And were you wearing underwear?
I was wearing lingerie, underwear. Yeah.
Okay. And he pushed it to the side.
There was no block. There was no reason. Yeah. He was able to do what he wanted to do.
And I don't mean to get too graphic.
That's okay.
But are you saying that they were crotchless when you say that it was lingerie? Like, can I just be clear on, did he push the underwear to the side or was that not an issue?
That was not an issue.
Why?
Because they were just lingerie panties, like, and I was going to meet my boyfriend later, so, yeah, so.
Meaning there wasn't much to them?
Right.
You know, some people are going to hear this story and they're going to say, you're telling me a U.S. senator in the middle of the day in a Senate office building committed a sexual assault right there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, how can people believe that?
I don't really care if people believe it or not. I've had to live with it. And it's just one of those things that's impacted and shattered my life. It changed everything about my life. In that moment, I knew how angry he was, and I remember thinking, like, taking it on myself, like thinking I put him in a bad position. Like maybe he thought I wanted to be with him.
Many people look at him and they say, you know, Joe Biden is a jovial, kind, warm guy. And he couldn't possibly be capable of that level of callousness. To those people, what do you say?
He is. I'll never forget the calling me nothing and the way he pointed his finger at me, the sternness. And then, you know, when he said, you're okay, it's like he just walked away.
So when you got out of the Senate building, what did you do next? Or did you tell anybody?
I remember just trying to get home. Like, I remember I had sitting on those stairs thinking I just had to get my legs to work so I could go back and get my purse. And then I remember being home. And then I was curled up, like in fetal position, practically talking to my mom.
Was she the first person you told?
I called her.
You told her all the detail?
Mm-hmm. It took her a while to get it out of me because I was embarrassed about the underwear I was wearing. She described it as sexual assault. I mean, she said this is wrong and you need to go to the police. And she was begging me to go to the police. She cried and yelled at me. And then when she was yelling at me, it really stressed me out. But
did you consider it? Did you consider going to the cops?
I did not, because it was the Capitol Police, and I just said, Mom, you don't do that here.
Did you tell anybody other than your mom?
And I told Karen. And she, I called her, and then we finally got to talk. And I just knew that something was going to change incrementally, like forever, right? So I took a shower. I remember that, and I remember trying to get like that smell, you know, just kept washing and washing.
Do you feel traumatized?
I felt scared. What I could say is I don't know if it was trauma, but I felt frightened. Like, and it wasn't just about this, what happened. It was like, it was my job tied up with it.
Did there come a time when you actually did complain about what had been going on in that office to anyone?
Yes, right before the assault, I had gone to Marianne Baker and we had our hallway meetings, and I was about, you know, not serving the drinks, and I started to tell her I was uncomfortable, and she did not want to hear that. Right after the assault, I wanted to tell her about the assault. So we were in the hallway. I was trying to tell her. I was trying to say something happened, and before I could really get any words out, she put her hand up and she said, I don't want to hear this.
There was nothing that would suggest to her you had been sexually assaulted by him?
No, I started to say something happened, and she didn't let me get further than that.
All of the complaining you did about the office environment happened prior to the alleged assault, except for the conversation you claim you had with Marianne.
Yes.
In the hallway where you felt shut down.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was a point at which you decided to file a written complaint.
Correct.
Was that after the alleged assault?
Right. Yes. So I decided to seek out some help, and they had something called, like, it was Senate personnel. We called it loosely, but it was like a office of, you know, I don't even know of for employees. Like, you go where you get your IDs, things like that, but you go and you
In
fill out.
your 8-month stint working for Biden, you claim you were sexually harassed, and I'm making a distinction here between harassment and assault. We'll
Right.
get to the alleged assault in a
Right.
minute. You claim sexual harassment began. How so?
I would see him in hallways or whatever. He would always just greet me, put his hands on me, or put his hands on my shoulder and rub, my neck sometimes. It was just a bit odd. And I'd never had an employer do that.
Did you ever see him behave inappropriately with someone other than you?
Not really. He would sometimes put his hands on people that I thought it was just unusual that he would just move people instead of saying excuse me. I would see that once in a while. But he seemed to, at meetings, he would like put his hand, not necessarily look at me, but he would just put his hand on my shoulder, and then I would feel his finger underneath my hair, like on my neck. And
Stroking your neck?
yeah, just a little with his finger, and it just would make me freeze up because I'm a demonstrative person, but he was my boss and quite a bit older than me, and I just was surprised by that.
What did you take from that? Did you think he was after something?
At the time, I just was so kind of surprised by it, and then I walked in. I was called in actually to the office by Marianne Baker, to her office, and there was a discussion going on about me.
Marianne Baker was Joe Biden's assistant for 30 years. She's in her 70s now, right?
Okay.
But she was your boss.
Correct.
Okay, so she was the person that you reported to, and what happened? You walked into her office.
They were having a discussion about having me serve drinks at a fundraising event, and an aide was arguing that to me, saying that, I didn't have to do that. That wasn't my job. That because the senator had said he liked my legs and thought I was pretty, I didn't have to do this.
Who told you that?
It was a Senate aide.
That it
And-
heard Biden wanted you because he liked your legs.
Correct. And I was called into the office because they wanted to discuss it with me.
Okay.
And then I had one of my hallway meetings with Marianne Baker when she talked to me about it. And she just said, if you want to get along here, you need to keep your head down and do what you're told. If you want to keep, working here, basically. And she said, you need to button up your blouses, you need to have longer skirts, and you need to not look so sexy and noticeable. And you need to, change how you're dressing.
Were you wearing short skirts and low-cut blouses?
No, I was wearing like, what you would get at Express, like just normal, like skirts. Back then in the 90s, we wore a lot of, pastel-y kind of things. I wore heels. I mean, I did dress. But
So what do you think that was about?
I think looking back on it, it was almost like damage control. It's like they were coming out aggressively at me because of the drinks thing, I think, but I don't know.
Did you change the way that you dressed?
No, it's strange you asked that. No one's asked me that. But at the same time, I was talking to my mother, who is a very strong feminist and was always ahead of her time. And she explained to me that was probably retaliation for what I was not, serving the drinks.
And your mom says this is inappropriate. What was your mom's name?
Jeanette.
So Jeanette says, you got to do something about this. Did you?
No, I didn't. She said, you need to at least document it. And I said, Mom, this isn't the kind of place you do that. And I also talked to my friend, Karen. So
You told her what was happening in the office.
in real time, yes, we were discussing it.
After they had the discussion with you about your dress, do you feel there was any other retaliation?
It just became very icy. And my friend Karen noticed it when she would, like, if we would go to lunch or something, when she'd call for me, there was like this iciness. Watching the person that assaulted me be elevated to the highest office in the land. He's running on a platform of character, and I found that gross. I know what he's like. I experienced what he was like. And I wanted people to know. He is presented as a champion of women's rights. And yet I know personally, and I know 7 other women that did not experience him that way. I think that they'll use anything to say that I'm not credible, so I won't address it in that way. What I will say is that I was very, very vocal on Twitter about trying to get the story forward.
Let's talk about what he said, because he went on TV last Friday
Yeah.
and said, first of all, it never happened. Period, end of report. This
Okay.
did not happen. He did say that in his view, accusers should start off with the presumption that they're telling the truth. Do you think he's afforded you that presumption?
No. I mean, it's been stunning, actually, how the some of his surrogates with the blue checks, that are his surrogates, have been saying really horrible things about me and to me on social media. He hasn't himself, but there's a measure of hypocrisy with the campaign saying it's safe. It's not been safe. All my social media has been hacked. All my personal information has been dragged through. Every person that maybe has a gripe against me, an ex-boyfriend or an ex-landlord or whatever it is, has been able to have a platform rather than me, talking about things that have nothing to do with 1993, like even the whole thing with being called a Russian agent, that in particular. That incites people. Actually, I got a death threat from that because they thought I was being a traitor to America. And I mean, these are serious things. And his campaign is, taking this position that they want all women to be able to speak safely. I have not experienced that.
Where does the line get drawn, though, right? Because he has to have the opportunity to question your story. Of course, he's going to come out and say, it isn't true, and these are the reasons I don't believe it's true, and you shouldn't believe it's true. Like, any man accused, or woman for that matter, has the right to do that, right?
Correct.
So where are people going wrong in the coverage of this story?
I think one thing that was notable was it took him a long time to respond, didn't it?
Biden.
Correct. Like, how long did it take?
Over a month for him to publicly respond.
Right, exactly. So it took over a month. And meanwhile, his campaign manager kept saying that the media had to investigate it. And to me, being a past victim advocate for domestic violence, I thought that was appalling. That's like calling the mob to tear apart somebody. And they did.
And have you had any representation during this time?
No.
You got rejected by Time's Up. Have you had a PR person?
No.
Have you had a lawyer?
No.
So it's just you?
Just me, kind of stumbling around trying to tell my story.
If he's watching this, what do you want to say to him?
I want to say, you and I were there, Joe Biden. Please step forward and be held accountable. And if you feel that you can address this in a real way, then and I know that you should step down. You should not be running on character for the President of the United States.
You want him to withdraw?
I wish he would, but he won't, but I wish he would. That's how I feel emotionally.
Do you want an apology?
I think it's a little late. Should have happened in 1993.
Now he says he's calling on the National Archives to release whatever documents that may have come from the Senate personnel offices while you were there in search of this alleged complaint. They say they don't have them. Some are saying he should release his Senate files that are being kept at the University of Delaware. He says he's not going to do that. He was asked, why not just have somebody go over there and do a search only for any document that mentions Tara Reade or sexual harassment? He won't do it. Your reaction to that?
I think that says it all. And I think once we get the document, we'll see what it says.
What if we don't get the document? What does that tell us?
Again, that says it all. I think that his reluctance is speaking volumes.
If I can just go back for 1 second to Blasey Ford.
Yes.
Because we mentioned her and we were talking about Believe All Women. Some of those who supported her but now have found a reason not to support you say, well, she was under oath. Would you go under oath?
Absolutely.
They say, well, she subjected herself to cross-examination. Would you do that?
Absolutely.
They also point out that she took a polygraph controlled by someone on her team. Is that something you want to do?
I'm not a criminal. Joe Biden should take the polygraph. What I would say is that they're not admissible into court, 1. 2, Blasey Ford took one. Is that true? I believe that's what I understand. But what kind of precedent does that set for survivors of violence? Does that mean we're presumed guilty and we all have to take polygraphs? So I'm just putting it out there. So I will take one if Joe Biden takes one. But I'm not a criminal.
President Trump has been accused by over 12 women of sexual assault or harassment or worse. And I think that gets to the heart of it. A lot of Democrats are mad. They're mad at you for, they see it as an attempt to tar their guy, the one guy who could bring down a man they loathe, and they kind of just wish you would go away. To those people, what do you say?
I say again, you don't have to discredit me or not believe me to vote for Joe Biden. Voting is a very personal thing, and I'm not here to influence the national election, and I don't want to be. I do not want to help Donald Trump win. I do not want to help Joe Biden win. Obviously, he's the person that hurt me.
There's an op-ed in the New York Times today by Linda Hirschman who says, I believe Tara Reid, and I'm still going to vote for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And I know it means I have to sell out Tara Reid, but I just think Trump's worse is essentially her position. More artfully stated than that. Can you understand that?
I think that says more about our culture and our society right now than it says about what's me, right? I mean, this is the highest office of the land. So do we want someone who thinks of women as objects, who thinks that they can just take what they want in that moment for their pleasure and that's it? And I guess that's the question.
On the subject of others coming forward, some people have said, if a guy's going to be this brazen in a sexual assault case, doing this to a woman who works for him in the middle of a Senate office building, in the middle of the day, in the middle of a corridor, he's a sitting U.S. senator, there would be others. That they can't believe Tara Reid because there's no one else making an allegation this serious. What do you say to them?
I say I think I'm a poster child as to why women wouldn't come forward, aren't I? If you've been watching any of the social media or the news and seeing how I've been attacked basically on everything about me, it's pretty obvious that if you did have, a story to come forward with about Joe Biden, it would be pretty daunting, wouldn't it?
What is the end game here? A lot of people think, she's just disappointed Bernie didn't get it. She's trying to make something up to go after Biden. And even if it's true, what's the end game? She wants Trump? What is the end game for you here?
My end game is basically telling my story in a dignified way, not be torn apart. And it's being able to move on with my life and heal.
How has this whole thing affected you?
It's been freeing. It's actually, I can't describe it, but even all the smears, it's just like, okay, bring everything out. Fine, talk terrible things about me. Say my bankruptcy was posted. And I want people to know, don't be ashamed if you're poor. Don't be ashamed if your life is messy. That's ridiculous. You should be able to talk about your life. We all have problems and no one's perfect. It took me a long time to come forward because of, things that were happening in my life. But from survivors, they always have this feeling like they have to be perfect or they have to have, and I'm not perfect. And it's all out there, everything about me. And in a way, it's just set me free.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet.